I never thought the smell of fish sauce could break my heart. But that night it almost did. My name is Sofia Morales. And for 12 years I chased 3 Michelin stars the way other people chase ghosts. I earned them in a kitchen in Manhattan, where the pass is so bright it feels like Judgment Day every service. I learned to cry in the walk-in so no one would see, to plate a dish with shaking hands after 17 hours on my feet, to smile for photographers while my burns still blistered under the sleeves of my chef's whites. I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me the day the guide called. I was wrong. The hardest part was coming home. Home to San Miguel, Texas, population 4,217. Where my family still runs Morales Coquina. It's the same little fonda my abuela opened in 1978 with 3 tables and a comal that never cools. I hadn't been back in 4 years, not since Papa told me on the phone that if I left again, I wasn't his daughter anymore. But love makes you stupid. It's my fiancé Julian. Sweet, patient, brilliant Julian, who designs restaurants for a living and believes family is something you can fix if you just try hard enough. Convinced me we should get married where I started. Let them see who you became. Mi amor, he said. Let them taste it. So I flew my entire brigade down from New York. I paid to have the old barn behind the restaurant restored into the most beautiful venue South Texas has ever seen Edison. Bulbs, oak tables, a wood-fired oven big enough to roast a whole pig. I hired florists from Austin, a string quartet that usually plays at the Kennedy Center, and a photographer who shoots for Vogue Mexico. I wanted to give my town something they'd never forget. I wanted my parents to be proud, even if they'd never say it out loud. I should have known better. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner in the restaurant. My mother cried when she tasted my new mole negro, said it was better than hers now. My father grunted something that might have been approval. My older brothers, Luis and Mateo, drank too much Modelo and told the same tired jokes about how I probably only cooked tiny food for rich white people. I laughed it off. I was used to it. I slept in my childhood bedroom for the first time since I was 17, the one with the faded Selena poster and the crucifix above the door. I hung my wedding dress on the back of the door, a simple, stunning silk crepe column by Carolina Herrera, the only thing I splurged on for myself. Next to it, in a locked garment bag, hung my 5 custom chef's whites. Each jacket had a different flag embroidered on the cuff. Mexico, France, Spain, Japan, Peru, every country where I staged, bled, and learned. I never travel without them. They're my armor. I kissed Julian goodnight on the porch, told him I'd see him at the altar, and went to bed smiling. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the smell. Fish sauce. Red Boat. 4ON. The good stuff I ship in by the case. The stench hit me like a slap. I bolted upright, heart already pounding. The house was silent, but the air felt wrong, thick, violated. I ran to the garment bag first. The lock had been cut. I unzipped it with trembling fingers, and the jacket slid out like gutted fish. Every single one had been sliced from collar to hem with kitchen shears. The silk lining hung in ribbons. Someone had taken a marker and scrawled Puta across the Mexico flag in dripping black letters. Then they'd emptied 4 bottles of fish sauce over everything. The stench was so strong my eyes watered. I stumbled to the wedding dress next. The Carolina Herrera was in shreds, literally shredded. Long, deliberate cuts from bodice to train, the silk hanging like skin after a shark attack. More fish sauce soaked into the lace. A note was safety pinned to what used to be the neckline. You don't get to forget where you came from. Stay and fix what you broke. Don't come back at all. Your real family. I stood there, barefoot in my sleep shirt, 34 years old. 3 Michelin stars, and I felt 8 again. The age I was when my father first told me girls don't belong in kitchens, they belong in the dining room, smiling for tips. I don't know how long I stood there before I started laughing. Not a crazy laugh, a quiet, dangerous one. It's the kind that scares even me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't call Julian. I walked to the kitchen, opened the walk-in my parents still keep in the same spot, and pulled out every single jacket my brigade had shipped down for service tomorrow. 8 identical, pristine chef's whites, pressed and hanging in plastic. I took one, then I took my tall hat from the top shelf, still in its box. I showered in cold water to shock the stench off my skin, blew out my hair. Did my makeup like I was walking into service on a Saturday night. I buttoned the jacket slowly, every button a vow. I slid the hat into my pocket. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Calm, lethal, beautiful. By 5 a.m., I was driving to the barn alone. The sky was the color of a perfect sear, soft gold on the edges. I carried only one thing besides the jacket and hat, the ruined wedding dress in a trash bag. I wanted them to see what they'd done in daylight. When I pulled up, my brigade was already there, setting up the outdoor kitchen. Diego, my sous chef of 8 years, took one look at my face and went pale. Jeffa, I handed him the trash bag. Burn it, I said. Film it, post it. Want the whole world to see what my family thinks I'm worth. Then I walked inside the barn and waited for the sun to finish rising. The first guests arrived at 9:30, right on time for a Texas wedding. Pickup trucks and shiny sedans lined the gravel drive, boots kicking up dust. Women in sundresses, clutching gift bags. Men already loosening their ties against the heat. The barn doors were thrown open, sunlight pouring across the long tables dressed in white linen and blue talavera. My brigade moved like ghosts in the background, silent, furious, protective. They knew Diego had shown them the video he'd taken of the burning dress. No one said a word to me yet. They just touched my shoulder as they passed, the way soldiers do before battle. Julian found me first. He was already in his Navy suit, looking like something out of a magazine. And when he saw me standing there in chef's whites, instead of the dress we'd chosen together in New York, his face cycled through every emotion a man can feel in 3 seconds flat. Confusion, fear, rage, pride. He stopped a foot away, eyes glassy Sophia. His voice cracked. Tell me what you need. I touched the double-breasted front of my jacket. I need you to marry me exactly like this. He didn't hesitate. He took my face in both hands and kissed my forehead like a blessing. Then that's how we do it. By 10:15, the barn was full. 300 people, half the town, plus every food critic south of Dallas and a handful of New York chefs who'd flown in on red-eyes, just to stand for me. My parents sat in the front row on the bride's side, smiling those tight-hose smiles they give customers who complain about the rice being too soft. My brothers flanked them, arms crossed, already sweating through their rented tuxedos. Mama kept smoothing her skirt. Papa kept checking his watch like this was a lunch rush he wanted over. No one had noticed yet that I wasn't wearing the dress. The quartet was playing a soft batch prelude. Julian stood under the floral arch with the officiant. A woman judge from Laredo who'd known me since I was a scholarship kid. She gave me the tiniest nod. Ready when you are? I stepped out from behind the screen we'd set up for the bridal party. The music didn't stop, but the sound in the barn changed. A ripple like wind across wheat. Heads turned, phones lifted. Someone actually whispered, Madre de Dios. I walked down the aisle alone, spine straight, hat still in my left hand, right hand free. Every step deliberate. The jacket was crisp, the black piping sharp against the white cotton. My name was embroidered in red just above the heart. Morales. Not their Morales anymore. Mine. I passed my tia Rosa and she crossed herself. I passed Mr. Garcia, my old algebra teacher, and he stood up without thinking. By the time I reached the halfway mark, every chef in the building was standing too. Arms behind their backs, chins high, like I'd taught them that stance on their first day of Stagiaire hell. Now they gave it back to me. My mother finally saw me. Her mouth opened, closed. My father's face went the color of uncooked pork. Luis actually took a step forward, like he wanted to stop me. But Mateo grabbed his arm and shook his head once, hard. I reached the front. Julian's eyes never left mine. The judge smiled like she'd been waiting her whole life for this exact moment. Dearly beloved, she began. Voice warm and steady. We are gathered here to celebrate the union of two extraordinary people, one of whom has chosen to meet this day on her own terms. A nervous laugh fluttered through the crowd. My father didn't laugh. The judge continued. Before we begin the vows, Sophia has asked to say a few words. Julian squeezed my hand. I turned to face the room. I didn't raise my voice. In a kitchen, you learn that volume is weakness. Precision is power. Last night I said someone broke into my childhood bedroom and destroyed my wedding dress. They also destroyed 5 chef's jackets that carry the flags of every country that taught me who I am. They poured fish sauce on everything so it could never be cleaned. They left a note telling me I don't get to forget where I came from. You could have heard a tortilla hit the floor. I'm not going to show you the video, I continued. You'll see it soon enough. But I brought something else to show you. I lifted my hand. Diego appeared from the side door carrying a silver cloche like the ones we use for VIP tables. He set it on a small stand beside me and stepped back. I removed the lid inside on a bed of rock salt still smoking from liquid nitrogen. Lay the ruined name tape from one of my jackets, the one with the Mexican flag. The letters Sofia Morales were half dissolved, the flag bleached gray from the fish sauce. Beside it, perfectly intact, was a single perfect tamal de elote, my abuela's recipe. The one that started everything. I looked straight at my parents. This is where I come from, I said, touching the tamal. And this I touched the ruined tape is what some of you think I deserve. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. My father's hands were fists on his thighs. My father stood up so fast the chair behind him scraped like a knife on a plate. This is a disgrace. He hissed in Spanish loud enough for the first 5 rows. You think you can come here dressed like you're better than us? The room inhaled. I didn't flinch. I turned to him slowly, the way you turn when the ticket printer spits out 20 new orders at once. Calm. 'Cause panic burns flesh, papa, I said. Voice steady. Sit down. You've already done enough. He didn't sit. His face was purple. Veins standing out on his forehead the way they did when I told him at 17 I was leaving for culinary school in Mexico. City, instead of staying to waitress, you want to talk about disgrace? He spat. Look at you. In a kitchen jacket? At your own wedding. Like a servant. Julian took 1 step forward, but I lifted a hand. This wasn't his fight yet. I looked past my father to the room. It's full of people who'd eaten my abuela's enchiladas and my mother's flan their whole lives. Servant, I repeated, tasting the word. Funny. Last year, I served 112 covers a night, 6 nights a week, 50 weeks straight. I paid my brigade's rent when their apartments flooded. I sent Luce's oldest kid to soccer camp when he couldn't afford it. I rebuilt this barn with my own money so this town could have something beautiful. But sure sounds like service to me. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone in the back started clapping slowly. Then another. Then half the chefs. The sound grew until my father had to raise his voice to be heard over it. You abandoned us, he shouted. You left and never sent a dime. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I nodded to Diego again. He and 2 line cooks wheeled out a stainless prep table. On it sat a thick folder. I opened it and lifted the first page so everyone could see wire transfer records. Every month for the last 9 years. 20% of my after-tax income deposited directly into the restaurant's account. Over $480,000. I turned the pages slowly, letting the room read the numbers. I paid the mortgage on Morales Coquina the year the roof collapsed. I said quietly. I paid for Mama's knee surgery. I paid Mateo's court fees when he wrapped his truck around a telephone pole. I paid for the new walk-in when the old one died. I never asked for a thank you. I just wanted you to keep the lights on. My mother was crying now, silently, hands over her mouth. My father stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Luis tried next. You think money fixes everything? You never came home. You forgot us. I smiled small and sharp. I flew home every Christmas until you stopped answering the door. I called every Sunday until Papa changed the restaurant number. I sent invitations to my James Beard Awards, and you sent back the RSVP card with no written in red pen. Don't tell me I forgot you. You erased me first. The judge cleared her throat gently. Perhaps we should let the couple continue. But I wasn't done. I reached under the cloche and lifted the ruined name tape, holding it between two fingers like evidence. This, I said, is what you did to me last night. You didn't just cut fabric. You tried to cut me out of my own story. But here's the thing about stories, Papa. You don't get to write the ending just because you held the pen first. I dropped the name tape back onto the salt. It landed with a soft hiss as the nitrogen steamed around it. Then I turned to Julian, took his hands, and spoke only to him. I was going to wear white today, I said, voice softening for the first time. But white gets dirty to easily in my world. This jacket has seen blood, sweat, fish sauce, and fire. It's been through everything I have, and it's still standing, just like us. Julian's eyes were shining. He brushed a thumb across my cheek. "Marry me in your armor, chef," he whispered. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." We turned back to the judge. She didn't bother asking if anyone objected again. The room had already answered. The vows were short, fierce hours. When she said you may kiss, Julian lifted me off the ground, careful of the jacket stayed perfect, and the barn exploded. Not polite applause. Real noise, stomping, whistling, the kind that rattles rafters. My brigade started chanting, "Jeffa! Jeffa!" And soon half the guests joined in. My parents didn't stand. They stayed seated, small, suddenly. While the rest of the world rose for me, the reception started like a wake and ended. Like a revolution, the string quartet packed up early. My brigade took over the sound system, and suddenly the barn was pulsing with cumbia rebajada and old-school Selena. Tables were pushed back, heels came off, and the dance floor filled with people who'd never seen a Michelin kitchen but understood survival when they tasted it. Diego fired the wood oven, and we served family meal for 300. Carnitas cooked low and slow for 18 hours. Salsa macha that made grown men cry, elote, with Duke's mayo and tajin. And my abuela's tamales steamed in banana leaves. No tiny portions, no tweezers, no $40 supplements. Just food that says I love you and I'm still here. I didn't go to my parents' table. They sat at the family table like statues, plates, untouched, watching cousins and tias line up to hug me instead of them. Every time someone told me, "Nunca había probado algo tan rico," I saw my mother flinch. Every time a New York chef shook my hand and said, "Honored to be here," chef, my father's shoulders curled a little more. At one point, I looked over and saw Luis trying to sneak out the side door. I caught him by the elbow, running. I asked quietly. He couldn't meet my eyes. "This is too much. So, Violetters, you made us look like monsters." "You did that part yourselves," I said. I just turned on the lights. He swallowed hard. "I didn't touch the dress. I swear." "That was Mateo and Papa." "I know," I said. "Your handwriting's worse." He almost laughed, then didn't. I should have stopped them. "Yes," I said. "You should have." I let him go. He didn't leave after all. He stood by the bar the rest of the night, nursing one beer, watching. Around 10. The James Beard Foundation. President, tall black woman in a gold suit who terrifies every chef in America, clinked a spoon against her glass. The room quieted. "I was going to wait until Monday to make this announcement," she said, smiling at me. "But some moments shouldn't wait." She held up an envelope, Sophia Morales. "For relentless excellence, for lifting up immigrant voices, for never forgetting where flavor begins. I am thrilled to inform you and everyone here that the Michelin Guide has awarded Estrella a 4th star, effective immediately." The barn detonated. People screamed. My kamas started crying. Julian lifted me onto a table, and the entire room sang Cholito, Lindo off-key, and perfect. I looked for my parents through the chaos. My mother was openly sobbing now, but her face wasn't angry anymore. It was something worse. When the noise finally died down, I climbed off the table and walked straight to their table. The music lowered. Everyone pretended not to watch. Badly, I pulled out the empty chair beside my mother and sat. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, my mother whispered, "Trellis. Dios mío mía." My father stared at his hands. They were shaking. "I didn't know you were sending money," he said, voice rough. I thought you hated us." I let the silence sit there a moment. "I never hated you," I said. "I hated feeling invisible. There's a difference." My mother reached out like she wanted to touch the jacket, then pulled back. "We were scared," she said. "When you left, the restaurant started dying. And every time you won something, it felt like proof we weren't enough. So we pushed you further away to prove we didn't need you." Stupid, prideful. I see that now. Papa still wouldn't look up. "I told the boys to do it," he muttered. "Said if we ruined the fancy dress, you'd have to stay. Fix things. Like you owed us your life." He finally met my eyes. His were red. I was wrong. "Sophie, I've been wrong since the day you came home with that scholarship letter and I told you culinary school was for people who couldn't make it the real way." The whole barn was listening now. But it felt like we were alone. "I thought if I made you small again," he continued, voice breaking, "you'd fit back into the space I left for you. But you were never small." I felt my throat close. I'd waited 20 years to hear something close to this. I reached across and covered his rough, scarred hand with mine. "You can't make me small, Papa," I said softly. "But you can still make me family. If you're willing to learn how." He turned his hand over and gripped mine like a lifeline. The party lasted until the stars burned out. At 2 in the morning, the last guests were swaying barefoot in the grass, while my brigade cleaned the kitchen like it was any other service, laughing, cursing, singing along to Juan Gabriel at full volume. I found Julian sitting on a hay bale sharing a cigarette with Diego, the two of them looking like brothers. When Julian saw me, he opened his arms and I folded into them, still in the same jacket, now dotted with salsa and champagne. I didn't care. Nothing could ruin it tonight. Eventually, even the brigade left. The barn lights dimmed to embers. Julian kissed my temple and whispered, "I'm going to check the cottage. Take your time." He knew I needed one more round alone. I walked back inside. My parents were still there, alone at the family table, 2 coffee cups gone cold between them. They looked older than they had that morning, like the day had wrung 10 years out of them and left the truth behind. I pulled up a chair again. This time Mateo and Luis were with them, heads hanging. For a long minute, nobody spoke. Then Mateo pushed a small wooden box across the table. I recognized it immediately. The cedar box my abuela kept her best vanilla beans in. "Open it," he said, voice hoarse. Inside, wrapped in cheesecloth, were the 5 ruined name tapes from my jackets. Someone had washed them by hand over and over until the marker was gone and the fish sauce smell was only a ghost. The fabric was still slashed, but the flags were clean. Mexico, France, Spain, Japan. Peru beside them lay a new tape, cane stitched in red thread. Morales Estrella Mateo couldn't look at me. I stayed up all night with Mama trying to save what we could. It's not enough. I know, but it's a start. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for mine. "We want to learn, Mia. We want to understand the world you built. If you'll teach us." I looked at my father. He was crying silently, tears cutting clean tracks through the day's dust on his cheeks. "I have one condition," I said. They all nodded. Too fast, like scared children. "Next summer, the restaurant closes for 3 months. You come to New York, all 4 of you. You stage in my kitchen. You'll be the lowest, Camille. You'll wash lettuce, you'll clean squid, you'll cry in the walk-in when I send your sauce back 6 times. You'll work doubles. You'll sleep for hours. And you'll do it without complaining, because that's the price of understanding what I do. And when the 3 months are over, if you still think money and stars are the only thing I brought home, then we're done forever. But if you can stand in my kitchen and still look me in the eye, Then maybe we can start again. Silence. Then my father did something I had never seen him do in my entire life. He lowered his head to the table, forehead against the wood, and said, "Sieve." "Chef," my mother laughed through her tears. "C'est, chef," she echoed. Luis, and Luis repeated it, half laughing, half crying. I let out a breath I'd been holding since I was 14 years old. The next morning, Julian and I flew back to New York. Life resumed. 19-hour days. New menus, investors, television shoots. But every Sunday at 3 p.m. sharp, my phone buzzed with a group FaceTime from San Miguel. My parents in the restaurant kitchen, hair tied back, aprons on, showing me their knife cuts, their turned artichokes, their first attempt at spherification, disastrous. Perfect. My father's hands, once so quick to slap a ticket and yell "Rapido," now moved slowly, carefully, respectfully. He asked questions. Real questions. About emulsion stability, about Mellard, about why I plate from the heart and not the head. 6 months later, I received a video. The Morales Coquina sign had been repainted. Underneath the original name, in the same curling script, someone had added "Estrella, sir," a teaching kitchen. Inside, my father stood at the pass in a crisp white jacket, no flags, just his name. Calling orders with the same voice he once used to scold me for burning rice. Only now the tickets were for tasting menus. And the dining room was booked solid for the next 8 months. He looked up at the camera, eyes shining, and said, "Service, poor favor." "Mi hija," I cried in the walk-in that day. Diego found me, handed me a towel without a word, and went back to the line. A year to the day after our wedding, I flew the whole brigade home again. This time, there were no shredded dresses, no fish sauce, no notes. Just a new cedar box waiting on my old bedroom dresser. Inside, 5 brand new jackets handmade by my mother and tias over hundreds of nights. Each cuff carried the same flags as before. But now every flag was appliqued over a tiny embroidered outline of Texas and across the heart. In my abuela's handwriting, copied by my father, Familia Morales Estrella. I wore one of them down the aisle a second time, this time for our vow renewal in the restaurant's new garden. My father walked me. He was still wearing his camide jacket, still had the burn scar on his wrist from his first week in my kitchen. When the judge asked who gives this woman, he answered loud enough for the whole town to hear. Her mother and I do. Finally. The second year was harder than the first. People think reconciliation is a straight line. Apology, tears, hugs, credits roll. Real life is a tasting menu with bitter courses you didn't order. My father lasted exactly 9 days in my New York kitchen before he walked out mid-service, threw his apron on the floor, and told me I was worse than any drill sergeant he'd ever met. My mother cried for a week straight because a reviewer called her tamales rustic instead of perfect. Luis got caught sneaking out early to drink with old friends, and I sent him home on the next flight. Mateo developed stress hives so bad he had to be put on antihistamines. I almost called the whole experiment off twice, but every time I reached for the phone to myself. Julian would quietly remind me, "You didn't earn 4 stars by quitting on day 9. Amor. So we kept going. The breakthrough came on a freezing February night when we were down to cooks and a Nor. Easter shut down half the subway lines. Only 12 reservations showed up, but I refused to myself we'd cook for them like it was a full house. My father was on garnish, hands shaking from cold and nerves. At 9:47 p.m., a single walk-in came in. A little girl, maybe 10 years old, clutching her mother's hand. They'd driven 3 hours through the storm because the girl had cancer and her make-a-wish was to eat at Estrella before her next round of chemo started. We sat them at the chef's counter. I walked out in my whites to greet them. The girl bawled under a knit cap covered in chiles, looked up at me with the biggest eyes I'd ever seen, and whispered, "Are you really Chef Sophia?" I knelt so we were eye level. "I really am." "What's your name, Kiriko?" "Marisol." I glanced at my father, who was watching from the pass, face unreadable. I nodded once. 10 minutes later, he walked out carrying a single perfect tamal on a small plate. He set it in front of Marisol with the same reverence he once reserved for bishops at Christmas. Then, in the gentlest voice I'd ever heard from him, he said in Spanish, "This is my mother's recipe. She made it for my daughter when she was sick. Now I make it for you." Marisol took a bite and started crying. Not sad tears. Happy, overwhelmed tears. Her mother cried. My entire brigade cried. I had to turn around and pretend to check a pan so no one would see me lose it. After they left, my father found me in the walk-in. He didn't say anything at first. He just hugged me so hard my jacket buttons dug into my ribs. Then he whispered against my hair, "I get it now. It's not about the stars. It's about that little girl's face." From that night on, something shifted. He still burned sauces, still cursed in Spanish when the Vitamix scared him, still called the iPad La Maquina del Diablo, but he showed up every day. On time, apron tied correctly, knife cuts getting cleaner, pride replaced by hunger. Real hunger. My mother discovered Instagram and became the most terrifyingly supportive food influencer South Texas had ever seen. She posted videos of herself practicing consomme clarity at 10 a.m., captioned "Para mí hijala cuatro estrellas." The account now has more followers than the restaurant ever did. Luis came back humbled and started a breakfast service at Morale's Coquina, turning out chilaquils that sell out in 45 minutes. He texts me photos every morning like a proud kid showing homework. Mateo took over the garden behind the barn and now supplies half my herbs for Estrella. We fly them up every few months in a little produce box labeled "Do Not Extremadios Babies." 2 years after the wedding that almost wasn't, I closed Estrella for one night, something I swore I'd never do, and flew the entire staff to San Miguel. We set up a pop-up in the old restaurant, 20 seats, 1 seating, 12 courses titled "The Menu That Raised Me." Every dish told a story. Burnt tortilla soup for the years I felt like ash. Mole negro with cricket salt for the nights I wanted to disappear. A single perfect tamal de elote served exactly the way my father served Marisol. Wrapped in corn husk, tied with string, presented like treasure, my parents sat at table 1. My father wore the jacket I'd given him the day he finished his stage, plain white. No flags, just his name and the words "Sous Chef Emeritus" in tiny script under the collar. When the tamal course arrived, he looked up at me across the pass with tears in his eyes and mouthed, "Thank you, chef." I mouthed back, "Thank you." Papa, after service, we opened the doors and fed the entire town for free until the food ran out. At sunrise the next morning, I found my father sitting alone in the kitchen, polishing the range like it was a shrine. I leaned in the doorway and watched him for a long time. He finally noticed me. "Your abuela would be proud," he said quietly. "She's not the only one," I answered. He smiled. The first real smile I can ever remember on his face. Small, tired, beautiful. That night, Julian and I renewed our vows again. This time in the restaurant kitchen at 4 a.m. Just us, my parents, my brothers, and the brigade. No guests, no cameras, no flowers. I wore my original wedding whites, the ones from the first ceremony, now repaired by my mother's hands, every slash sewn with red thread so the scars showed like kintsugi. Julian wore his apron. My father officiated, voice shaking but steady. When he got to the part about "in sickness and in health," he added his own line, "and in fire and in fish sauce," until the last plate returns clean. We all laughed until we cried. Sometimes people ask if I forgave them. The answer is yes and no. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a menu that changes every day. Some days it's easy. Some days it still tastes like smoke. But we keep cooking. Last month, my father sent me a photo. He's standing in front of the restaurant, holding a brand new sign that reads, "Moral Sestralaquatoyo Sins. Why Contando Abuela would have wanted 5. Underneath in smaller letters. Closed Mondays so the family can rest." I framed it and hung it above the pass where every cook can see it when the tickets never stop coming. Because that's the real 4th star. The one you earn when you finally stop trying to prove you're enough and start proving they always were. The night we opened the new Morales Estrella in San Miguel half-fin dining upstairs. Half teaching kitchen downstairs, I stood on the roof at sunset and looked out over the town that once tried to shrink me. The sky was the color of a perfect cayeta, slow and golden, and the air smelled like mesquite and orange blossoms. Julian came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Feel real yet?" he asked. I laughed softly. "Ask me after first service." We had 120 covers booked. Every seat spoken for by people who had flown in from Mexico City, New York, Copenhagen. Tokyo, critics, chefs, friends, enemies, family. My parents were downstairs in crisp new jackets, my mother on pastry. My father running the hotline for the first time in 40 years without yelling once. Luis was on Expo, Mateo on cold apps. My old brigade from Estrella had flown down to help open, and they moved through the kitchen like it was any other night. Only every time they called an order, they finished it with sub. Chef Morales and I felt my heart crack open all over again. At 5:55 p.m., the first ticket printed. My father's voice rang out. Steady, proud, Arail, familia. Hands in. Service for my daughter begins now. I walked the dining room in my whites, greeting tables the way I always do, quiet. Quick smile, eye contact. Thank you for being here. When I reached the corner booth, I stopped breathing for half a second. Marisol was there. 16 now, hair grown back thick and dark, wearing a chef's jacket 2 sizes too big. She stood up when she saw me, eyes shining. "They told me I could stage with you tonight," she said, voice trembling with excitement. "Just for service. If that's okay, chef?" I looked at her mother, who was crying happy tears into her napkin. Then I looked at my father, who had come out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a side towel. He gave me the smallest nod I'd ever seen. I pulled out the chair beside Marisol and sat. "One condition," I told her. "You call me Sophia Letters and you fire the tamal course tonight," she gasped. "Really? Really?" Service was flawless and chaotic in the way only opening nights always are. Tickets flew, flames leaped, my mother's flan wobbled perfectly. My father's mole sang. At 10:47 p.m., Marisol carried the first tamal to table 1 herself, hand steady, chin high. The room went quiet for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. I caught my father watching from the pass, eyes wet. Pride so big it didn't fit in his chest anymore. When the last dessert went out, we killed the music and gathered the entire staff, old and new, blood and chosen, in the kitchen. I climbed onto a milk crate the way I do every closing at Estrella. "Family meal in 5, I said. "But first, one thing." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the very first name tape my mother had saved. The one with the Mexican flag half dissolved by fish sauce. I held it up. "This used to be who they thought I was," I said. "Ruined, dirty, not worth saving." Then I reached behind the range and pulled out the new one my father had sewn for me. "Last week. Morel's Estrella in bright red thread. The flag's perfect, the fabric pristine. This is who we decided to become." I pinned the new tape over my heart, right on top of the old scars in the jacket. Then I looked at every face in that kitchen, my husband, my parents, my brothers, my brigade, Marisol. Cooks who had flown 12 hours to stand for me. And I said the only thing that mattered. Thank you for not letting me give up on them. And thank you for not letting them give up on me. My father stepped forward, took the ruined tape from my hand, and without a word pinned it inside his own jacket, right over his heart. "So we never forget what love costs," he said. Then he turned to the brigade and barked, "Arail, family meal. Carnitas and too much tequila. Tonight we celebrate." We ate until dawn, passing bottles of mezcal and stories like bread. At some point, Julian carried me up to the roof again. The sky was turning that soft pre-dawn blue that always makes me think of new plates. He kissed me slow and certain. 4 stars, 2 restaurants, 1 stubborn heart. He whispered against my lips, "Think we can handle a baby next?" I laughed into his neck. "Only if they're born with a side towel in one hand and a torch in the other." He grinned. Deal. Below us, the kitchen lights were still on. I could see my father teaching Marisol how to clean the plancha the right way, and my mother showing a new stagiaire how to fold tamal husks into perfect little boats. My brothers were arguing over who got the last piece of chicharron, same as always. Only now they were smiling while they did it. I looked at the town lights blinking awake, at the life we had almost lost to pride and fish sauce and fear, and I felt something settle inside me that had been restless since. I was a little girl standing on a crate to reach the Comal piece. Real, earned. Still scarred piece. I rested my hand over the new name. Tape on my chest, Morales-Estrella. It fits now, and if you're reading this, if you're carrying your own ruined dress moment in a backpack full of old hurts, a heart that still flinches when the people who should love you most reach for scissors, listen close. They can cut the fabric, they can pour the sauce, they can try to make you small, but they can't. Take the fire if you refuse to let it go out. Keep cooking, keep rising, keep choosing the harder, hotter, braver path. One day you'll stand in your own kitchen, scars sewn with red thread, feeding the people who once tried to starve you. And you'll realize the menu was never about the food, it was always about who you were. It's become when you refuse to be broken. Thank you for walking this aisle with me. Now go burn something beautiful.